We all have a destination in mind for our life. Somewhere better, somewhere happier, somewhere healthier. But sometimes the end is so far out of sight that you don't think you'll ever get there. Sometimes you get off track. Sometimes you feel stuck, knowing there's got to be more. Even if you feel overwhelmed, or lost, or even just unsettled, God wants to meet you right where you are. He has an incredible journey for you, and every great journey begins somewhere.
Good morning and welcome to Locality, and especially to you who are all outside and not inside. We believe at Locality that God has the first word in our service, and Psalm 95 says, "For God is the great God, He's the King above all gods. For He holds the depth in His hands, and the mountain peaks belong to Him. The seas belong to Him, for He formed them. And in His hands He formed the dry land. So come, let us worship Him today."
Behold,
part of your weekend with us, especially if this is your first time here. Now, before we get started today, we just want to give you a look at some things coming up for you and your family around Locality. We believe that the best way to grow in your walk with God is to surround yourself with real and meaningful relationships. And that's why we value community so much around here. So whether today is your first time or Locality has been your home for a while, the easiest way to start meeting people is through a small group. These are so much more than just a quick handshake or hello at church. Small groups are where you can develop deep and lasting friendships that go beyond a simple Sunday morning. And this is what makes a church family so relevant and valuable to your life. We've got a new way to join small groups that is easier than before, and it helps you find the group that's perfect for you. Simply visit locality.today to sign up, and we'll see you there. All around us, both far beyond our borders and right in our own neighborhoods, there are people who desperately need the kind of love that only Jesus can give. So how do we make a difference? Well, we believe that a local church is the hope of the world. One face-to-face moment with God can change everything. And that's why serving and caring for people inside of our church and outside of our walls is so important to us. Every week, people just like you volunteer their time to serve in our kids' classes, production teams, setup crews, pretty much everywhere. Our volunteers are the heart of our church. So if you're currently on one of our volunteer teams, we want to say thank you for giving of your time and serving with us. And if you'd like to volunteer here with us, you can jump in and get started at any time. Just visit our website, locality.today, to learn more. Hey, thanks again for hanging out with us this weekend. If you got questions about anything you've heard today, or if you just want to find out more about the church, ask one of our volunteers or visit us online.
Tried something different this week. My name is Braden. If you haven't met me, I'm the pastor here at Locality. One of the things I do that is different is I don't wear shoes when I preach. And sometimes it's a distraction for certain people. But when I growing up, there's a story in the Old Testament where God calls Moses and tells him to take off his shoes because he's standing on holy ground. So I take off my shoes as a reminder that when I preach and I proclaim the word of God, that I'm standing on holy ground. So it's an act of reverence and respect. To help remind myself and center myself that what I am doing is extremely important to proclaiming the word of God. Also, some of you may have noticed that Shane was not here. Supposedly, young people think they get 2 honeymoons now. So he's on his second one, and a lot of us have another one to go on. So this is going to be a really fun year for all of us. Before we get started, actually, I'd just like to bug Shane a little more. If you post on social media that you were here, you just mention like best music Sunday ever. Hashtag who needs Shane. With that moment of respect, let's pray. Father God, say thanks. We say thanks that you are God who loves us, that you are God who knows us exactly as we are, that we don't have to have some false pretense of like trying to pretend that we have our life together, that we don't have to do certain things before you love us, but you love us just as we are. You know who we are. You know what we struggle with. You know our doubts, our insecurities, our mistakes, and our faults. And despite all of that, you love us. Father, we say thanks. Father, in we pray. Amen. You may have heard these words growing up. I only heard them maybe once or twice from my parent. Braden, you heard me. You just weren't listening. And to which, I usually had a great theological response. But Mom, I can't be held accountable for something I didn't actually hear. To which my mom would once again respond, no, you heard me. You just didn't listen to me. I can think of several times I pretended to sleep so I couldn't hear my mom telling me that I had to do some chore or something. Yet no matter how good of an actor I was, she knew I was faking it. She knew I heard her, but I decided not to listen to her. As we're entering into this new year, we're looking at a bunch of different stories where Jesus encounters people, and what he does is he makes belief in them. He helps them believe once again. And I wonder for us how many we could say that phrase, you heard me, but you just weren't listening, could hold true to our relationship with God. Maybe we've heard him, but we didn't listen, or we've just grown deaf to the words of God. And I think oftentimes that becomes our story. Like, God, I cried out, God, I offered these prayers, I did all these things, and where were you? Like, why didn't you respond in those moments? And so today we're going to look at this incredible story when Jesus encounters a deaf and mute man. And when he heals him, his faith is restored. And so today we're going to look at Mark 7, verses 31 through 37. A little side note before we jump into it. Mark is kind of like, it's the shortest gospel that's out there. It's kind of like a brief overview of everything. If you're going to pick a gospel to read, pick Mark. It reads really, really quick. Someone tells me it's kind of like a comic book. It kind of just flies through everything. So Mark gives you like this brief overview of everything, but for some reason, when he hits this section, this is the most detailed section in all of Mark. It's almost as if he slows down and he says, there's something important here that I want you to see, there's something I want you to know, and there's something I want you to pay attention to. And so today we're going to look at this passage that Mark finds extremely important, where he slows down and says, listen and hear what God is doing. And this is what it says in Mark 7, chapter 31 through 37. It says, then Jesus left the vicinity of Tyre and went through Sidon down to the Sea of Galilee and into the region of Decapolis. There some people brought to him a man who was deaf and could hardly talk, and they begged Jesus to place his hands on him. After he took him aside away from the crowd, Jesus put his fingers into the man's ear. Then he spit and touched the man's tongue. He looked up to heaven and with a deep sigh said to him, Ephphatha, which means be opened. At this, the man's ears were opened, his tongue was loosened, and he began to speak plainly. Jesus commanded them not to tell anyone. But the more he did so, the more they kept talking about it. People were overwhelmed with amazement. He has done everything well, they said. He even makes the deaf hear and the mute speak. So a little bit of context. Jesus' popularity is starting to take off. If you can imagine a man who can travel and heal people, word spreads pretty quick. And so people are starting to hear the story of this man named Jesus who can do these amazing things. And in the back of their head, they're thinking, is this the one that the prophets have said that is going to come deliver us? They said he would heal. They said he would do great miracles. And we're starting to see these things in Jesus. And so there's this excitement. There's a buzz going on. Because people think this might actually be the moment. This might be the one that we've been waiting for thousands of years. This might be him. And Jesus, for some reason, doesn't really want word to get out. So he's telling everyone after he heals them, don't tell anyone. Right? Just don't tell anyone. And I always think it's one of those moments like, gotcha, Jesus. I'm not going to tell a soul. Did you hear what he just did? You know, it's like one of those things that you can't help but tell. Like there's that excitement going on. So of course, he's spreading what's happening. But for some reason, Jesus didn't want anyone to know what was happening. One of the things I love when we look at the miracles that Jesus did is I think Jesus liked to annoy people. Like that's just the best example I can. Everything he did went against the trend. Like they said, oh, you shouldn't be really hanging around women. You shouldn't be touching these unclean people. Because if anyone had anything that was a physical illness, it was because they were sinful in the eyes of people. So if you had something wrong with you, it was God judging you for something that you had done. So people would separate from them. You'd be isolated. You'd be without a community. But yet you just went to those people and touched them, which was something you weren't supposed to do. You would hang around women and include women in this ministry, which was never anything that had ever happened. And here we get to the story that Jesus heals a man who is deaf and mute. Okay, so if you've heard the story, this joke, let me tell it. Don't interrupt. There's a husband who goes to the doctor. And he tells the doctor, I think my wife has hearing problems. But she's so stubborn, she won't come to the doctor. She won't come see you. So can you give me some form of test, something I can do when I get home, so I can prove to my wife that she has hearing problems, and maybe only then I can convince her to come see you. And so the doctor says, okay, that makes sense. So this is what I want you to do. When you walk into a room where she is, when you're at 15 feet back, just say something. And see if you get a response. And then if you don't get a response, take 5 steps forward, so you're about 10 feet away now, and say the same thing again, and look for a response. And keep moving forward until you get a response from her. And so the husband says, okay, I can do that. So he comes home and he opens the door and he walks in and he sees his wife making dinner in the kitchen. And he's about 15 feet away. And behind her he says, hey, hon, what's for dinner? No response. So he takes a few steps forward and once again says, hey, hon, what's for dinner? No response. Takes another couple steps. Now he's 5 feet behind her and says, hey, hon, what's for dinner? No response. Steps up right behind her, right next to her left ear and says, hey, hon, what's for dinner? And she turns around and says, for the 4th time, potato soup. That's the attitude we have with God. God, I asked you to show up. Where were you? God, I needed you in this moment. Where were you? I kept asking, and God, you know what? You never showed up. And I wonder if a lot of us are like this husband. We keep calling out. We keep looking for the response. And we think that the person's not responding, that maybe God has hearing problems. But perhaps it's us, where we're not tuned in to hearing what God is saying. Throughout Scripture, God says, my sheep hear my voice and they know my name. They respond to me and they will follow me. There's a story of conflict that Jesus responds, but maybe it's us who fail to hear what God is saying. So Jesus comes up to this man who is mute and deaf, and he heals him. It's a pretty remarkable thing. I mean, he reaches out and he touches people and they're able to see. They're able to hear for the first time. And so Jesus does something crazy, like he spits and he touches his ears and his tongues, and he's healed. Now, if you're a disciple of Jesus, one of the things you're supposed to do is you're supposed to do anything that your rabbi does. So when Jesus spits and touches people, you're supposed to do the same thing. I can't help it if the disciples in this moment are thinking, yeah, I don't know about this one, Jesus. Like, let's just touch them first and see if that works. And then maybe I'll, I think this is like the first biblical wet willy that's ever happened. So Jesus spits, he touches his ear, he touches his tongue, and then he throws his hands up into the air. And some people say he's making a dramatic statement, a dramatic motion, because this guy can't hear. So Jesus wants to be intentional that he can see him, and they can hear him, and that he can know that God is going to heal him. In a sense, Jesus is doing whatever it takes to get his attention so that he can know that he is present and that he is here. We're told he sighs. There's only 3 other times in Scripture that we see this word sigh, and one of the most popular ones is the one that all of creation sighs. All of creation groans. It's this idea that the whole world groans because this is not how it's supposed to be. That it's this longing for something better, for something greater. And when Jesus looks at this man and he sees what's wrong and he sees that he needs to be healed, he sighs and he groans because he says, this is not how it's supposed to be. That this is not the way the world is supposed to be. We're also told that the Holy Spirit groans on our behalf. In the moments in life when we struggle to have the words to say, when we're so overcome with grief or struggles, and we don't even know what to say to God, Scripture tells us the Holy Spirit prays on our behalf. In the moments when things seem dark and things seem hard, we're told the Spirit groans for us. God says this is not how it's supposed to be. That this is not what the life is supposed to be like. And so Jesus raises his arms and he says these words, Ephatha, be opened. When I was in seminary, I always asked the question, why wasn't this translated? My professor said, well, it's in Aramaic. I said, I know, but the rest of the Bible is in Hebrew. We translated that into English. So I was like, why would we leave like this? And there's 2 other times that it does it. When Christ is on the cross, Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani. My God, why have you forsaken me? And then there's one other time when he raises the little girl from the dead. He says, Talitha kumi, little girl, stand up. And so I always wondered why these 3 times was it never translated into English, but was left in the original language. My professor said the best guess that we have is they wanted us to understand that what Jesus was saying was a dramatic statement. They wanted you to emphasize it, to know that he was making a bold declaration in this moment. And so he's saying, be open. Would you be open? Would you listen to what I am saying? And he touches the ear of this person, and they're open, and immediately he can hear, and his tongue is loosened. I think for a lot of us, we need to know that we have a God that is emphatic and a God that is dramatic. For a lot of us, we need to know that we have a God who gets on his knees and gets eye to eye with us. And he throws his hands in the air and says, can you see me? Will you know that I am here? I know that life is hard. I know that life is challenging. But I want you to know more than any time in your life that I am here. That we have a God that wants us to know, more importantly, that he will do whatever it takes to get our attention. That maybe we're not listening to the voice that he has, but he's throwing his hands up in the air and says, if you can't hear me, I'm going to make certain that you can see me. That there's moments in life where we keep thinking, God, I can't hear you, but he says, but look, I'm here. I think some of us need to know that we have a God that's going to take and do whatever it takes for us to see him and to hear him and to know that in the moment he's present. There's a thought that people who have hearing problems also have speech impediments because maybe the way they're speaking is how they hear. So what they hear is how they speak. And I think for some of us, and I know for myself personally, that's been my story with God. I struggled to hear God speaking in my life, and I've struggled to hear what God is actually saying. And so then I've struggled to share it, because I don't actually know how to show and describe who this God actually is. Or as a friend of mine would always like to say, it's like you're a person who's licking like the pages of a cookbook, like licking the picture in a cookbook and trying to describe the food that you've never eaten. Right? For a lot of us, we struggle to hear God. And then when we try to like describe who he is, we just don't have the ability because our hearing's impaired. And so I think for a lot of us in this new year, what we need is we need to know that we have a God who gets on his knees, he gets toe to toe, knees to knee, eye to eye, and he reaches out and he touches us. And he says, I have so much I want to say if only you would listen. In the history of the church, there's what's called the Epitha Rite. It's predominantly in the Catholic Church. Some Protestant churches have it. But before someone was baptized, they would stay up all night praying and fasting, very similar to what we do here at Locality. But that next morning they would have what's called the Epitha Rite, which was before they were baptized into the community, they wanted to know that these people could proclaim Christ. So this is what the priest would say, which is called the Epitha Rite. Would you be open? Would your ears be open to the praise and the glory of our God, so the entrance to the Christ community enables you to hear and to proclaim the good news of Jesus? I think a lot of us, we need to relearn to hear, we need to relearn to see, and relearn to speak. I think most importantly, we need to relearn the sign language of the church. A lot of us, we've struggled to hear what God is saying, but God's speaking without words, he's doing it in actions. And for the longest time, the sign language of the church has been service. The sign language of the church has been being present for other people who are there. So in a world where people cannot hear God, they can see God. Because as a church, we said we're going to be there. We're going to be acts of service. We're going to be present. When life is hard, we will be there. When you need help, we will be there. We're going to be present whatever it takes. Because we need to know more than anything that we have a God who is dramatic. We need to know that we have a God who is doing whatever it takes so that we can see and hear what he is doing. So that our ears can be opened and our tongue can be listened so that we can actually share the story of God. That we'd actually be able to describe a God who loves us more than anything, so much more than someone who's looking at the picture of the cookbook and trying to describe what grapefruit tastes like. I wonder what it would look like if we allowed ourselves to be open to hear the voice of God, but then to take it a step further and actually share with us like with someone else. Now, the whole idea of like sharing this message is something that's like daunting and it's scary. And I don't know if you're like me, but full disclosure, I'm a pastor. And when that moment comes that I feel like God's saying, Braden, I want you to talk to this person, I like to, affirm God's will is the way I like to say it. And so I got to put some conditions on it. Like, okay, God, if this is what you actually want, I just need you to verify that statement. So, sometimes I'll say, okay, God, I know you want me to do this, but let's make sure it's not me just talking to myself. Like, I want to be confident in this. So, God, if this is something you actually want me to do, could you make the sun come out and the next drink that is ordered be a dirty chai with almond milk and maybe like a little bit of breve float across the top? Because nobody ever orders that. And it's by a 6'3" lumberjack who sides as a mime in his free time. And then if the song, if some George Michael could come on the radio, like, gotta have faith, I would know without a doubt that in that moment, you wanted me to talk to this person. But it's a great thing God's pretty patient with me. And it seems like in those moments, he's always reminded me, Brandon, remember what I've done. Remember how I've been here Remember I've been present. Remember how I got on my knees, I got eye to eye with you, and I threw my arms. Because I wanted you to know more than anything that I am here. So my hope for the new year, I want to be a part of the church that opens their ears and opens their tongues so they can hear and see what God is doing, but they can also share it with other people. That I want to be a part of these stories where God is at work. I want to be part of a church that is confident in the phrase, when I say, like, when we end our service, I almost always say, that God go before you to lead you, because I'm confident that God will go before you to lead you. But more importantly, I want you to know that God goes before you, and that He's behind you to protect you, that He is beside you so that you may know that you have a God who's on His knees, who's eyes to eyes, who throws His hands in the air, and does whatever it takes so that you may know that He is here, and that He is present. And He reaches out and He touches us, and the moment we know that we're not alone. He says the words, Ephphatha, be open. That's my hope. As we enter into this new year, a lot of us, we like to make commitments and vows, and like, this is what my new year is going to be like. I'm going to lose weight because for some reason all my clothes shrunk in the wash this year. Right? Like, I'm going to be a better parent. I'm going to be more patient even though my kids are hellraisers. Like, I'm going to be more loving. Like, because I'm just going to do all these things. And we make all these commitments. Like, we're going to read more books. We're going to be smarter. And for some reason, YouTube and Netflix always wins out over the books. But we make these commitments of things we want for the new year. And I think really what these promises are, and all these commitments that we make, is we just want to know, is it going to be okay? Is this next year going to be okay? I think a lot of that's what it gets down to. Because last year was hard. Last year we had a lot of struggles in our marriage. Last year was really tight financially. Last year I had moments that I wondered, do I even love my kids? Last year I wondered, does God have a plan for me after college, or what does He actually want me to do in this moment? And we just want to know, like, is this next year going to be okay? Is it going to be better than last year? God, is there any hope? Is there any chance that there is going to be something greater than what there was? What I want us to see in this passage for those of us as we enter into the new year, as we make these hopes and these commitments, and just wanted to know, is life going to be any better? It all begins here. We have a Savior who comes up to us, who sees our pain and our hurt, and the fears and the questions we have from the last year. And He groans. He sighs with us. His heart breaks because He says, this is not how it's supposed to be. I want something that's better for you. We have a God that will get toe to toe and eye to eye with us. He'll throw His hands in the air and say, I know this year's been hard. I know you've challenged with a lot of things. I know there's been struggles. I know you face massive things that you could never think you could handle. But just focus on me right now. Forget all the other things going on in your life. Forget what's happening. Just look into my eyes. Look into me, because I want you to know that things are going to be okay. And we have a God who groans. We have a God who reaches out and touches us and knows it's going to be okay. He says, Ephphatha, be open. So this year, as you started off, as you make your challenges and make your hopes and your dreams of what this year could be, that it could be better than last year, may your ears and your eyes be open to a God who is present and a God who is at work in the world around us. And may you know more today than you have ever known in your life that you have a God who is present, you have a God who will do whatever it takes so that you may know that He is here, that He is present, and that He is the hope for this world. Amen. Heavenly Father, I know for many of us, the challenges of this year have been hard. We face consequences and struggles. But Father, I pray today that our eyes would be open, our ears would be open, our tongues would be loosened, that we could see and hear what you are doing. And Father, I pray that we'd be a church that we would continue to show the motions of a God who loves us. In our acts of service, other people who yet cannot hear you would see you are here. And that you are doing whatever it takes to get our attention. Father, for that we say thanks. And we pray. Amen. We come to the point in our service where we remember what God did. When he went to the extremes to make certain that we would know that he is here, that he is present, and that he loves us. To put to doubt any questions that we may have that there's a God who loves us more than anything. So Scripture tells us on the night the Lord Jesus was betrayed, he took bread and he broke it. He said, "This is my body, which is for you. Do this in remembrance of me." In the same manner, after the supper, he took the cup. And he said, "This cup is a new cup of my covenant. Do this in remembrance of me, for whenever you eat this bread and you drink from this cup, proclaim the Lord's death until he comes again." I want to invite you to stand. In a little bit, we're going to invite you to come forward, and we're splitting you into 3 sections. You two, and this is a section, you two, and this is another section. We just ask that you go to your right and come forward. And someone will hand you a piece of bread and say, "The body of Christ is for you," and they'll offer the cup, and we invite you to dip the bread into the juice, and they'll say, "The blood of Christ is for you." When you come to the table, we're reminded that we come to the table because of what God has done. And may you know as you come forward that you have a God who is waving his arms, who's on his knees, who's looking eye to eye to you so that you may know that he is here, he is present, and he loves you. These are the gifts of God for the people of God. reminder as you leave this place. You can give online or give on your way out. If you're one of our guests, we just ask that you let that pass. At Locality, we believe that God has the first word and that God has the last word in our service. So as you leave this place, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord go before you to lead you, behind you to protect you. May he be beside you so that you may know that you are not alone. We have a God who is eye to eye and waves his arms so that you may know he is here, he is present. We have a God who is beneath you to be your firm foundation and above you to shower with his grace. Do not be afraid, for the Lord your God was with you always. Go in peace. Amen.